Let's take a trip back in time to 2003. I was still wearing diapers, but that's not relevant to this story. What is relevant is that WordPress was released in May of 2003. And at the time, WordPress was absolutely revolutionary. WordPress allowed people who didn't have any programming experience to build websites, to build blogs, and to actually start contributing to the internet. And that was absolutely amazing, but it's no longer 2003. I'm no longer in diapers, and WordPress itself is no longer revolutionary. I mean, it's been around for a very long time. And, in those 22 years that have passed by, other options have come around. And one of those options is called Webflow. Now, if you don't already know what Webflow is essentially a visual development tool. So the goal of it, why it was created, was to allow designers and anyone really to program and build out their websites visually without having to know code, but still kind of getting all of those advanced options that coding gives you. And people loved it. Webflow is, at this point in time, I believe, used by about 4% of the internet. It is growing absolutely rapidly, and people are loving it. That being said, WordPress cannot be left behind because the WordPress ecosystem is ever evolving. Even though WordPress came out in 2003, things have been dropping every single day in the ecosystem. And back in 2022, something that did happen definitely changed the WordPress ecosystem, and that is Bricks Builder was released. Now, if you're not familiar with Bricks Builder is basically a visual programming page builder for WordPress. So the goal is essentially to give you that same magic that you get in Webflow with WordPress. Does it actually serve that goal? We're going to talk about that in this video, where I'm going to do the ultimate comparison between Webflow and Bricks Builder. Now, I just want to say I use both of these tools every single day and I love them. So you're not going to get a biased, one-sided viewpoint out of me. I truly do love both Bricks Builder and Webflow. So let's get right into it. And the first thing that I want to start this video off with is pricing. So here we are on the Bricks Builder pricing page, and I'm just going to start with this one because honestly it is a little bit more straightforward. Bricks Builder costs $79 a year for one website, $150 for two, $250 for unlimited, and you can also get an unlimited one-time $600. That's what we have here at MemberStack. Totally worth it if you watch this video and it's still around. If you can, I would recommend it. Anyways, so Bricks Builder pricing is very, very, very cheap, I would say. However, the thing is, you're building a WordPress site. Bricks does not host your website. So even though you do have very cheap pricing with this, your final costs are going to be more. So a Bricks Builder subscription is going to run you for one website about $6.50 every single month. Then you're going to need some sort of hosting, which is generally no cheaper than $4 a month. I find usually a Bricks Builder site costs between $10 and $50 a month to run. And then over here, we also have Webflow. And, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. Webflow pricing is confusing. So I can't really explain, everything to you here, but I'm going to try to give you a general overview. So first things first, you may need a workspace plan. Unlike WordPress, if you're building a lot of sites, you need an actual workspace plan that gives you and your team members access to it. Those can go from $20 a month per person to $50 a month per person and down into enterprise, right? There's multiple different types of workspace plans. There's multiple different types of site plans. There's add-ons. There's all sorts of things. Don't worry about all that right now. What I would say you should worry about is this. If you're running one site on Webflow, chances are to use all of their features, you're going to want to have the CMS plan, which is $29 a month. Add-ons you probably won't need. We've got optimize, analyze, and localization. And again, if you're just building one site, you probably don't need to spend money on a workspace plan. So I would say that you can expect to spend about $30 a month on your Webflow site. And when I'm comparing these two, I would say that more or less it is a similar price to run a site with WordPress and Bricks as it is to run a Webflow site. But The next thing we're going to get into is maintenance, and that kind of shakes up this whole pricing bit. So like I said, maintenance shakes up the entire pricing bit, and you're probably thinking how, because those are two separate categories. Here is the thing, and this is no fault of the Bricks team. It's not like Webflow is doing better than Bricks in this sense, but Webflow is a SaaS product. It is hosted on its own. They manage it. They manage updates. They manage all of that stuff. When you're building a site with Bricks Builder, it is just a WordPress site at the end of the day, and WordPress sites come with maintenance. WordPress sites have plugins that need to be updated, Bricks itself needs to be updated, WordPress itself needs to be updated, and while a lot of these, and most of these I would say, are just one-click updates, you have to be careful because these are things that could break your website. And so I would say when you take maintenance and pricing into account, it's probably cheaper as far as time and money goes to run a Webflow site than it is to run a site with Bricks. So the next thing that I want to do here is actually pop open both of these tools and start to compare them right in front of you. And the first thing that I want to start by comparing is design control. So let's get right into that now. First things first, let's actually go ahead and hop over here into our Webflow testing site. And we have absolutely nothing, as you can see. And what I'm going to do, just for example's sake, I'm going to try to mention everything as well that matters, is I'm just going to add a heading on both sites and kind of show you how that looks. So here we are with our heading. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a class. Let's just call it my-heading. There we go. And so we have access to all of these different CSS properties. And along with that, we have custom properties now in Webflow, which is really cool. At the end of the day, the thing that I love about both of these tools is that they give you superior design flexibility. So I've used some certain tools where I need to get funky and do some workarounds. If I let's just say this header right here would look better if it was 1 pixel further down. Webflow gives you the power to customize all of that. So I could change this to 19, I could change it to 20, I could change it to 5,000. I could do absolutely anything that I want with it. And that is why people started flocking over to Webflow, because they can actually build whatever designs they have in mind, which is really, really cool. And that was something that people were frustrated with WordPress about unless they actually knew how to do all of that coding themselves. So now let's head over into our site here with Bricks Builder. And as you can see right off the bat, it just feels very similar. So I'm going to add a heading again. And similar to Webflow, Bricks gives you a visual development experience. Now, the style panel is on the left side, not the right side, but who cares? That doesn't take very long to get used to. But similar with this heading right here, if I wanted to, let's say, add 1 pixel of padding, 1 pixel of margin, whatever it is that I want to do to it, I can do it. And that is why Bricks Builder is so cool, because it gives you that same Webflow magic inside of WordPress. There's a lot of other cool things that you can do. For example, I can name this to be whatever I want, and that's just the layer, similar to Figma, whereas then I can go and give this a class of big-heading, for example, and that doesn't update that. Whereas if I go back into Webflow right now and I open my navigator panel, as you can see, the name just gets tied to the class. So that's not really about design flexibility, that's more just the differences in the two products. That being said, on the topic of design flexibility, I would say if you have one takeaway from this section, let it be that both platforms are made to give you superior design flexibility, and if that's your priority, I would say you are in good hands with both. So the next thing that I want to talk about is animations, and that is something that may or may not be important to you. See, me personally, I'm more focused on web apps, so animations aren't really a big part of my job. Now, if they are a big part of your job, I would recommend watching this closely, because this is going to tip the scales very much so. So here we are right now in Webflow, and I've got my heading over here, and Webflow has the interactions panel. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do interaction trigger right here. Let's do scroll into view, and we have all of this preset stuff. So let's say I want to slide in from the left, and that looks good. Preview, as you can see, it slid in from the left. That's great for basic animations, and Bricks, you can do similar stuff too. But where Webflow is really cool is their actual interactions panel. So over here, let's just call this swing heading or something like that. The thing that I find about Webflow, now here's the thing. Here is one piece of context that I do want to give you. I've been using Webflow almost every day for about 7 years, I think, at this point in time, whereas Bricks Builder I've been using for, I'd say, the last 8 or so months. And I am more experienced in Webflow, so there may be things that I just don't even know yet in Bricks Builder. But what I do know is that anytime I have an idea in my head for an animation, I can hop right on into Webflow and get it done. So right now I'm literally just gonna try to have this so it goes slowly down and slowly up. And I'm gonna build that right in front of you so you can see that I just had this idea right now. I've never actually built this in Webflow before. I mean, it's kind of ugly, why would I? But, you know, I'm gonna show you right now that I can just go ahead and build that out right in front of you. So now I'm gonna set this to move, and I have my controls down here. Let's go ahead and just make this like 500 down. And then let's add another one, move, and I think we set this to 0. Yep, so it goes back up to its original position. Let's set this to 2 seconds. Let's set this to 2 seconds. Let's set this to ease. And let's set this to ease. And let's go ahead and save it and then set it as a loop. So now if we preview this, as you can see, this heading is just gonna go up and down and up and down and up and down. So it's a very ugly and random animation. Nonetheless, I just had an idea for an animation and built it with no code in Webflow in, what was that? I don't know, maybe 20 seconds. So Webflow, when it comes to animations, in my opinion, is absolutely a godsend. And if I was building more animation heavy websites, I would definitely be using Webflow more. Now, hopping over here back into Bricks, here's the thing. Bricks has these interactions, and you have trigger, let's say click, and then you have various things. Now we have JavaScript function and things like that. And from my experience, if you code in Bricks, you can accomplish all of those same things, no problem. But if you're not a developer, you don't know how to code, you don't want to code, I don't know, you are clearly more limited in Bricks as for what you can add. We don't have that same crazy timeline view or anything like that. I've been successful with implementing some basic interactions, and that's about it. Now, I do want to mention there are some plugins for animations. I've heard of Motion.page and BricsForge personally. I hear they're great. I haven't used them, but we're just comparing the direct, products here. So again, in this situation, I am going to give the heavy winner on the animations category to Webflow. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about here is dynamic data in the CMS. So more than likely, whichever one of these platforms you are using, you are going to want to work with dynamic data in some way, shape, or form. So I really wanted to make sure I covered that here for you in this video. And both, I would say, are great for sites that have dynamic data. That being said, there are some kind of core differences. So again, let's hop back into it, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So first things first, here we are in Bricks. And Bricks, the thing is, does not have a CMS. Bricks is WordPress. It uses WordPress, which is a CMS. So really, we're more or less comparing the Webflow CMS and the WordPress CMS here. And what I would say about the WordPress CMS is that it is so flexible. So for example, if I want to go and set up in here a new custom post type, whatever it may be, I can open my advanced custom fields plugin. Yes, I need a plugin or code for that. And just add like a whole bunch of different custom fields. I can add hundreds of custom fields. I can add a bunch of different custom post types. There's a bunch of different types that I can do for my fields. I have no limit on my items. The WordPress CMS, as someone who had come from using the Webflow CMS all the time, it feels like a breath of fresh air. It feels like I'm no longer hitting these limits. I absolutely love the WordPress CMS. Now, in order to compare apples to apples here, I do want to head back into actually Bricks Builder, because this is a Bricks versus Webflow video, not a WordPress versus Webflow video. I'm just going to open this and mention some of the, Bricks related things to keep in mind. So first things first, Bricks has dynamic data. So I'm going to go ahead, add a section and add a heading again. So here we have this, and anything. So Bricks has, for example, conditions. Bricks has all sorts of different things. And whenever you see this little lightning bolt right here, that is dynamic data. So I can grab this. I can, as you can see, I can use member stack data if I want to. I can use my ACF custom fields. I can use all of this different stuff. And not only that, I can insert it like mid-sentence. So let's say, for example, I wanted to do this. It is just amazing. Like, you can really do whatever it is that you want to do with the WordPress CMS, and I love that. Now, I am extremely experienced in the Webflow CMS. I have used it to do things that probably other people would not recommend you do with the Webflow CMS. I've gone crazy with the Webflow CMS, and my thoughts on the Webflow CMS are that on the plus side, it's very well put together. Everything is in its place and everything plays very nicely together. What I don't like about it are the limitations. So there are limits on CMS items, for example. There are limits on CMS fields. There are limits on CMS collections. And again, when you're in WordPress, you can get around any of these limitations because you have access to all of the code. In Webflow, you don't have access to all of the code. So if you run into these limitations, you're either just, out of luck, or you need to come up with some workaround, which can be a bit, sketchy sometimes, to say the least. So as for the CMSs, I would say if you want a smooth experience and you don't have these crazy requirements, you're going to be better off in Webflow. If you do have crazy requirements or ever evolving requirements, I would say you're going to save yourself a lot of headache just going for WordPress, right? And then finally, when it comes to using that dynamic data in Webflow, it is a little bit more limited. Let's say, you can use that dynamic data on your CMS collection pages. You can use it in collection lists. And also, you only really have access to what you have access to. So something that I've always run into is, let's say, I want to say, welcome to my, blah, blah, blah blog post. And I wanted this to be the title of my blog post. Let's say this was a collection template. I would have to do that with custom code, which is like really weird, or adding multiple text elements in. Whereas with Bricks, I could literally just be like post title, and it would work. So anyways, to sum up the CMS and dynamic data section, it's hard for me to say one or the other is better, but what I would say is that Webflow's is a lot cleaner and more organized and easier, whereas WordPress is just far more limitless. So pick your own adventure there. Is it more important to you to have a smooth, easy experience, or maybe not, but you also get something that's totally limitless in the process? So pick your own adventure. I wouldn't say one or the other is actually better here. They're just different. Now, the next thing that I want to get into is an interesting topic that you may not know about, or if you're used to one of these platforms, you may not have even considered this. You may think that it's always the same, but it's not. And that category here is classes and styling. So this is something where I was just used to Webflow, and that was how it worked for me. And when I got into Bricks Builder, I was like, dude, this is weird and I'm confused. I feel out of place. But I very quickly grew to absolutely love it. So first things first, let's hop into Webflow. And in case you don't know, I'm going to show you how classes work in Webflow. So in Webflow, we essentially have a combo class system. So here we have my dash heading. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm also going to add in an image. So here we have my dash heading, and let's go ahead and add a combo class to it, red. That's what it's called in Webflow when you add multiple classes like this, combo classes. And then right here, let's do my dash image. And let's go ahead and style this just with some like corner radius, 500 pixels. There we go. And then let's add red to it. So here we have this, and let's say I want to use red to determine the border color or something like that. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm just going to make the border red. Let's make it 10 so you can see it. There we go. That is now red. But, if you're used to Bricks Builder or something else with a similar class naming system, you may be going, why doesn't this now have a red border? And that's the thing. Webflow works on a combo class system. So now if I add my heading red, and I want to make it so that, text is red, I can do that. But this red right over here and this red right over here have no relation to each other whatsoever. They're totally different. It's like this is the red inside of my heading. and this is the red inside of my image. Now, if we head over to Bricks Builder, we have a totally different setup. So right over here, I'm just gonna say, hello, this is my heading. And then again, I'm gonna add an image. So there we go, and let's just select, okay, let's not do an image, whatever, we'll just leave it as that, it'll still add the border. So let's go ahead and add to this my dash image, and let's add to this my dash heading. So now, again, let's do what we did last time, exactly the same, and let's add red to this, and red to this. So now we have my image red, and we have my heading red. So if you remember, that's exactly what we have in Webflow, my image red and my heading red. Back on over here into Bricks, I'm gonna go ahead and I am going to just go to my image red. I'm gonna select red, and I am going to set a border over here of, let's just say again, 10, 10, solid, and red. There we go. Okay, so if you didn't notice what just happened as well, I have to have an image in here so it's not showing up. But anyways, the point is, I edited my image red, and it also set that to my heading red. So that is the thing about the way that it works in Bricks. Basically, all of these are like individual rules, and I can drag them around like that. They're all independent classes. They're not combo classes. So that is something that I actually find really, really great in Bricks. In Webflow, it can get frustrating. Again, let's say I have this red class and I want to customize this red class. You know, in Webflow, the thing is, I have this red class and I have this red class, and the two are the exact same. It just says red, but there's no relation between, you know, one and the other. These are technically two separate combo classes, not two combinations of three separate classes. So it is different. And again, let's say I now want to edit my heading. I can click it, but I can't edit it. You know, if I want to edit now my heading, I have to delete red. I have to go on here. I have to make it 50 pixels, and then I have to re-add red. This is something that I didn't even know bothered me when I was just a Webflow developer. But now that I use both Bricks and Webflow, it bothers me. You know, I much prefer the way that Bricks has it set up. Now, I'm not going to sit there and tell you one is better than the other. I'm just going to tell you that I prefer it. So whatever makes more sense to you and feels better, go for that option. All right, so finally, the next thing that I want to talk about is templates. And I am a big fan of templates or anything that's going to save you time in development. And this is one thing where I think these two definitely are different from one another. So first things first, I want to get in and I want to talk about Webflow. So Webflow over here has over 7,000 both free and paid templates. And I mean, they're beautiful. There's something for everyone in here, and some of them are $20, some of them are free, as you can see, some of them are $130. You've kind of got something for everyone over here, and along with that, you have something called Made in Webflow, which if I go through here and, for example, go to, you know, most liked, I can go to recent, I can search, anything like that. These are pretty much all, some of them I can't clone, I can just look at, but let's say this one over here, for example. This is by FlowMonk over here, and this is just a free template. You know, you can go ahead, clone this right now without paying anyone, without any card details. You can build it and you can build your site. And this is just something that, you know, these FlowMonk people have contributed to the Webflow community as a free resource. And we here at MemberStack give a ton to the Webflow community in the sense of free resources. So as you can see, there's a bunch here, and that is, I would say, one of the greatest parts about Webflow. It's not even Webflow, it's the community and the contributions that people can do to it. So now, if we want to talk about Bricks Builder and the templates, just go ahead and click up here, and you can see the community templates, and there are about, you know, a couple of them. There's not too many. I just scrolled through every single template. Some of these are page templates, some of these are whatever. Bricks, in terms of templates, just doesn't come even remotely close to Webflow. That being said, we did build here at MemberStack, we built Bricksboard. So just bricksboard.com like that. And this is a website which we essentially made to be the Bricks Builder version of Made in Webflow. So over here, anybody can go on, publish a component, a page template, whatever it may be, and share it so that other people can use it. So that is super cool, but this is something that we made. This is not something that is like a native, Bricks feature. So again, in the template point of view, I'm gonna have to give the clear winner to Webflow. Webflow has been around for longer though, and I'm hoping Bricksboard here and other community resources do start to take off and get that same level of community magic into Bricks Builder. And finally, the next thing that I want to talk about is third-party support. So the communities, the plugins, the tools, and all of that stuff. How difficult is it going to be to fit into this ecosystem? So first things first, I want to talk about WordPress and about Bricks Builder. So WordPress has a plugins library, and the WordPress plugins library is like huge. There is anything and everything out there. That being said, the compatibility is not necessarily the exact same thing. So you have a lot of WordPress plugins. A lot of them are made for Gutenberg, a lot of them are made for Elementor, and they kind of have varying levels of compatibility with Bricks Builder. And there are some, but there's not that many, Bricks Builder enabled plugins out there. So with that being said, let's switch over to Webflow. Webflow has a apps marketplace, an apps library, let's call it, which is a relatively new thing. And there are not that many apps live. There are some things that are live, like for example, MemberStack. MemberStack allows you to add auth, gated content, social logins, and a whole bunch more, both to your Webflow site and to your Bricks Builder site. We have direct integrations with both so that you don't need any code. And there are things like that, depending on the plugin, depending on the third-party resource that you need in the Bricks community. That being said, it is newer, so it's still growing. However, one thing that's really great is that you are not reliant on the Bricks developers or WordPress developers or anything like that. If a plugin doesn't work for you with Bricks, you can literally go ahead, edit the code to make it work for you. And even if you can't do that, you can work with AI. So, the options are really kind of unlimited when it comes to that. So again, I would say that these two are more or less the same, because while WordPress has way more plugins and resources, all of the Webflow plugins and resources are made for Webflow, whereas not all of the WordPress ones are made for Bricks Builder. So at the end of the day, you're going to have more stuff on the WordPress side, but it's not all going to work. Whereas on the Webflow side, you have less stuff, but it pretty much all works, if that makes any sense. So anyways, at the end of the day, these are two amazing ways to visually build a site without having to work with a specific developer, without having to know code, and just being able to manage the whole thing. They're both phenomenal. I use both every day. Which one I use is entirely dependent on the project that I'm building, what the requirements are, or just what I'm feeling like that day. So, take everything that I mentioned to you in this video and think about the next project that you're going to work on and try to decide, are you better off with Bricks or are you better off with Webflow? That's it. I hope you like this one, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great day.